they were for sure, interested, but I didn't follow up because I feel like at that point I look anxious, right?
100%. I think it's the worst thing you could do is follow up.
Agreed. And I told my client, listen, you can be really like laid back and low key as part of your strategy. And you don't have to be aggressive to be aggressive. Like,
no.
As a negotiation tool,
Being non-aggressive is really fucking aggressive.
And that is the new art form. Like,
oh, man.
You can't be over anxious and chasing people down. You have
like
to believe.
It's like dating. There's no, I'm telling you something. I always say this to people. They're like, do you think I'd be good in real estate? I'm like, I don't know. I go, can you walk into a bar and get a phone number from a girl or whoever you want to get a phone number for? Because if you can never meet somebody and get them to give you their phone number, I said, or anything else, I said, you're good at sales. What's the 5 Ps? Do you remember it?
Proper preparation prevents poor performance.
There you go. It doesn't matter how much money we get. If we don't close, it's no money, right? So no close is no money. I'm everything that I am because of my dad's death. And I wouldn't be as successful without his death. Hello, welcome to the Jason Theory, episode 6, season 2. And I'm here with Ken. You're a founding member, right? You're one of the first people.
No, I was one of I worked at Rubloff before I went to Prime.
Oh, my Lord. Okay. See, I got to do my research more. So I'm here with Ken. Ken, give us your stats.
My stats on what? How long I've been in the industry?
Yeah, everything. Yeah. Whatever you want people to know about you.
2004, I started at Rubloff only because I was going to buy a piece of real estate. And at the time, for some of you people, don't hold it against me, but I was going to buy a hotel suite at Trump Tower. And I met an agent there, Kyoko, that told me I should interview with Rubloff. So then I interviewed with Jim Kinney. And long story short, I ended up in Darlene's little office at Rubloff on Halstead. And then I went to Add Properties in 2010 after 6 years at Rubloff.
Oh, so, okay. Then, well, let's start.
So I've been doing this now almost 20 years.
Awesome.
Next year will be 20 years.
So 20 years for Ken, and we're going to talk on assorted issues, have some nice stories, but also talk about how the market has changed in the last 20 years, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, expectations of buyers and sellers, what the rate hikes have done to people, and the challenges with a lack of inventory and keeping buyers motivated to keep them pressing. And we'll also get into something that Ken wanted to talk about, which I think is awesome, is chasing agents that are looking at your properties and what are the positives and the negatives. I think they're all negative. Ken does too. So we'll get into that too. So like when you do hire a realtor and you're like, hey, what's the feedback? Do this, do this, do this. We're going to tell you why that doesn't work. It's kind of just like dating. You don't want to be the first person to call that person, right? You got to, it's like,
it's like the 3-day rule. It's the 3-day rule. And even then, they call you after 3 days.
Yeah, absolutely.
They get nervous that you haven't called them.
And that's when someone else reaches out to you first, it's the first lesson in negotiations. So let's talk about, first and foremost, what changes have you seen? We'll talk about interest rates first, because that's what everyone asks me the first thing. Oh my God, interest rates. So what have you seen different from 3% to 7% in terms of what buyers are looking for and the expectations of those buyers? Have they changed?
I think at the price points of like 300, 400, 500,000, that shift in interest rates really has impacted people. But I also think, I have a buyer now that's buying something for like 480. His dad sold his building in Indianapolis and he's paying cash for this place. Normally, he probably wouldn't have been able to even afford this place, but he's getting basically a parent bank loan. And I've had 2 clients, one guy that just sold, his parents held the mortgage. And when he closed, they had to pay back the parents' loan for his sale to go through the title company. So there are these people that just have cash. And then there's people, younger buyers that may have cash through their parents. And I think some of the higher end buyers just have cash, so it's become a non-issue.
Do you think that what have you seen any, because I've seen changes, not in terms of like how the financing has happened, but let me make it a little bit more specific. Have you seen changes in what people are wanting to get? So like I've seen a shift from, and I talked about it yesterday on TikTok, I've seen a shift from people wanting shiny and new because interest rates are so inexpensive that people don't give a shit if they're paying $100,000 for $20,000 worth of shiny shit. And I've seen a shift from that to value. And I've seen a shift on my million underbuyers are like, hey, listen, I don't need shiny and new at 1.3 because I can't afford the payment, but I'll take that same location older and let me add value to it, because now it makes more sense to use money versus borrowing at 7% for shiny and new. Have you seen anything like that on your end?
I have seen some of that because people are willing to put their own touches on spaces, but there are some buildings that even though you can make it look shiny and new on the inside, you know, between you and I, hey, those exteriors can be sometimes dated too, so you got to be really careful with that. But I'm still shocked that there's just duplexes now that are going for like 1.5 million. I mean, a long time ago, there was a duplex down in my neighborhood on the 3900 block of Greenview, and I remember there was almost $1 million duplex down, and I just thought it was bonkers.
So my client just paid $1,275 to be on a corner lot in Seminary and a duplex down, and they could afford a 1.3, 1.4 house, and they just didn't want it. The duplex down has really gotten expensive.
Agreed, because it's the most like square footage.
Yeah.
It's affordable. So maybe that is the difference. They don't want to buy a dated home for 1.4. They would rather have a tricked out condo for 1.2.
Yeah. And you look at that 1.4 house and the angles and how it's cut and the space is a little funky. And now what these developers have done, which is really smart, is they've extended the lower level to do 4 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms and a family room. Because the big thing with duplex downs, it was either 2 up, 1 up, 2 down, 3 down. Like you couldn't get the 3-on-1 level with the family room. So if it was 3 downstairs, you were on the top floor. And I always told my clients that were pregnant, that hadn't had kids yet, you don't want all your family area on one floor, because when the kid comes, it's a fucking cyclone.
I think the all bedroom down, duplex down floor plan, not for me.
No,
because it ruins that second living space of having your kids being downstairs while you're upstairs.
Yeah. So this new developer, the new development, what they're doing with this 4th bedroom or / family room downstairs, you do get a space to dump stuff downstairs where people don't see up, and the prices on that have just gone through the roof. And you're not seeing the same price appreciation on the second floor and the penthouses. They're kind of staying, I mean, you get a little bit, but it's nothing like you said, going from like $1 million, getting $1.5 million or $1.4 million in a duplex down now in a nice neighborhood is like standard.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And I'm seeing that stuff like around Wrightwood, some of those areas to, circling around to Bosworth. There's a couple on Southport that are a resale that are amazingly crazy price.
Yeah. And you would think like this resale market going into interest rate at 7%, like we're not seeing what I would think we would see, which is obviously we have less sales, but we also have 30% less inventory. I mean, I just pulled the numbers to have a little bit so I don't sound like a complete moron. But the inventory of homes year over year from last June to this June is down 30%, which means new listings down 30%, and the amount sold is also down that, but that just makes sense. Closed sales are down 23%, and amount of listed is down 30%. So, and we're basically down 3% on price. So it's just shifting basically everything down, but we're not getting that effect that I think people thought we would get from interest rates. And I find that
for price,
I find that unusual. Like, it's crazy.
I think the problem is, and people have talked about it, they don't want to move if they got a low rate. I mean, listen, I'll be honest with you. I have a 7-1 arm that's expiring. I've been so gangbusters the last 3 years that now I have to refi at a higher rate because frankly, I was too busy to deal with my own crap, which was a huge mistake on my part. But it's at a lower price, so I'm not losing sleep over it.
Yeah.
And my house has probably gone up a ton of value in the last 3 years. So
it's just so mind bending to me. Like I'm sure you do. Like the first question you get, man, what is like? That's it. What's rates done? What's happening? The market's falling apart. I'm like, no, it's not. The city of Chicago, forget about the auxiliary stuff, because when you talk Chicagoland area, they're bringing in like Naperville. You know, it's broad.
Yep.
The city of Chicago itself 2 weeks ago hit an all-time price high. It's like 410 or 415 around there. I talked about it a couple weeks ago. I just never would have thought that would happen. Is the city of Chicago finally turning into a more affluent city? Because we've been cheap.
I talked to a realtor that lives at the Palm Olive. He bought his place for $1 million. He's like at the height of the appreciation. He went up to like 1.4. He's like, it's back at $1 million after 17 years of living there. And Chicago has been notorious for like not really getting crushed, but really going crazy. So it's like, I always tell people, like, if you're concerned about comparing like appreciation, buying and not getting appreciation, I'm like, when you rent at these high-end buildings,
oh, it's nuts.
You don't get any of that money back. So who cares even if you're flat? If you live somewhere and have a little bit of a write-off, who cares?
Yeah,
Even
and that money's
a little
coming
money
back to you too when you
Yeah.
sell.
And who cares if you lose a little bit of money? Like when people tell me like they lose 30 grand after living there 5 years, maybe if it happens, and then that they lost money, I'm like, you have to live somewhere.
So the people that say that to you, are they sub 35 or over 35?
I think they're probably over 35.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I think, I mean, we're close to the same age, right? So we're knocking on 50. I'm knocking on it really close, very close, 6 months. But I think like our age,
We're going to circle back on that.
yeah, I think our age group from like, I would think from 45 to 75 still understands that a house has utility and it's not a straight investment.
Correct.
And when I talk to people that are 35 and under, it's just like, I gotta make money. And I sit down with them at a desk like this, and I'm like, dude, there's fucking utility. I'm like, this is a home.
Yep.
You're gonna enjoy yourself. I mean, you go to a restaurant and you buy a $500 meal because you want to enjoy the food. You could also go drink a protein shake and have the same nutrients, but you want to enjoy the experience. That's what a house is. You have to enjoy the experience while you're there.
Yeah.
And I just think that's lost.
I think, I don't know, people are smitten by amenities they don't use and some of that other stuff that's not, to me, like practical long term. So you can still buy a house and you could still invest in an index fund. You could still invest in some crypto if that was your thing, but you don't have to like trade one for the other. You can just try to do everything.
What are you seeing? Do you do a lot of multi-unit like stuff?
No.
No.
Like selling?
Selling, buying, like what do you see? Like what do people say to you about multi-units now? Are they afraid of the interest rates, or like they want to get in it, or they're still very pro house hack?
I think where the multi-units will do well eventually is people that they want to stay in Chicago. They don't want to go into a condo. They may buy a 2 or 3 flat instead of their single family to offset their monthlies, and eventually have one unit that's very nice, and then have either two Airbnbs or 2 solid renters to offset.
Do you bring that up to people when people say to you, I want to buy a house or a condo? Do you ever say, hey, have you ever thought about buying them?
I have done that, but I find that those people are just like, having renters, this almost does their head in. So they're either in that they would do it, or they're like, no way in hell, because some people think renters are all crap. And I'm like, no, a lot of these renters probably make more money than you do. They just want to rent.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I'll bring up this conversation to people and be like, this is like, if I was under 30, I would only buy multi-units that I lived in.
Correct.
It's the biggest mistake I made. I mean, I bought condos and this and that. Garbage.
Yep.
I would only do that if I was under 30. And then I tell them all this stuff. And they're like, that's awesome. Let's do it. And then we take one day and go to multi-units and we leave like, yeah, no, we can't do this.
Yeah, they freak out. I had a client that literally wanted to buy one, live on either the first floor and rent out the second, and she was gung-ho on it, and the husband was not.
Have you gotten to the point in your career now when you walk into a place and you talk to somebody and you're taking a listing, or you're talking to somebody that calls you and says, hey, I want to buy some blah, 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 and you just get a horrendous vibe where you know this person is going to be a complete pain in your ass? Is there, I mean, maybe it's price sensitive, but is there a point when you're like, yeah, I'm not working with you?
As if they were my buyer?
Or buyers or sellers?
I recently had a seller that I was doing something for where I was selling one of his 2 flats and then 5 of his existing condos. And I have to pay a referral fee to a realtor in Florida. And I brought in the buyer on his 2 flat and he wanted me to cut his commission. And I tried to fire him. I said, listen, I am not cutting my commission on this deal. These are my buyers.
You would take them somewhere else.
Yeah. And honestly, I said, I would cut this if it were a normal deal. If I wasn't paying the referring broker in Florida, then it would be different. But I said, I know how difficult it is to sell all these. You wanted a professional to handle all the tenants so they didn't get upset during the sales cycle. You get all this, and then you're asking me to basically reduce my fees for you. I said, those last 2 condos, I said, if you don't want to work with me, you can just have them back. And I think like quickly, people change their tune when you just sort of tell them, like when you're younger, you'll just run after anything. And, but now as you know, your time gets more valuable. You don't work on stuff that's becoming difficult. And honestly, people.
I don't really think it's difficult. I think what you're getting at is you don't work with people that don't respect your profession, right? Because if someone's asking you to cut your commission, they just don't respect what you're doing. You're talking about managing. First off, if you're selling a multi-unit and you're a seller and you're hiring a realtor, just managing the tenants alone. First off, it's not our job, but that's okay. We
agreed.
If you're going to be successful, you're doing stuff that's not your job. That just is in any profession, right?
Yep.
In any profession. So you're managing that. They're all yelling at you because you're interrupting their space. And then on top of it, you're dealing with high interest rates, cap rates, deferred maintenance, all that stuff that's to be done. And then all of a sudden he turns around and says, oh, by the way, thank you for bringing me a buyer that you could have took anywhere.
2 days before closing, this ass came up.
I mean,
come on,
dude.
I told him, I said, I'd rather get paid on this deal and you can just keep the other 2.
Absolutely.
Because why would I kill myself to?
Well, because the minute you say yes to that, he's like, oh, this guy doesn't respect what he's doing or is willing to do this, and then it just keeps rolling.
And the fact that like you don't basically push it back in his face when you get him a good price on all this stuff, And when I was like, we can't sell any of these like without list price because it'll just ruin the rest of the sales for the other, 4 units we're selling, 3 units we're selling, 2 units we're selling, as I'm selling these last 5 units, And
I mean, unfortunately, he doesn't realize that you're trying to keep more money in his pocket by making your job more difficult.
Correct.
And then, so you said this to him, then he's just like, let's just keep it going.
Listen, at the end of the day, we're talking about $7,000, and I guarantee with everything I sold, I made that up and more.
Yes.
By being in this business and knowing how to make all that happen. A lot of younger agents or less experienced agents can just get pushed over easily. And I mean, it sort of goes back to this thing we're going to talk about as far as like the 3-day rule and not chasing these. I always have to stay firm with these people knowing they're going to come back if they're interested, and you can't just drop everything by another $5,000, $10,000. And when you hold those prices for these people, they should appreciate what you're doing for them.
Well, especially on 4-fold. So you're talking about $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, and he's talking about 7. So I mean, it definitely is that. So let's definitely get into that. So a lot of sellers, and we all have this, you have a showing, what was the feedback? What was this? What was that? What'd they say? My favorite one is, we'll put something out and they're like, what'd they think of the price? Did they like the price? And I'm like, do you think they're going to tell us if the price was good or bad. I mean, any broker worth their weight in salt is gonna be like, oh, I think it's too expensive.
Agreed.
You know what I mean? Like, so like, what is to a seller, if you're listening to this, and this will definitely be a snippet, what do you gain? Like, what are you trying to gain by feedback? Because no one is going to be honest. This is a game. Everyone is trying to get an advantage, and a broker is going to try to get that advantage to the client. And the buy and seller themselves just wants an advantage. I don't understand, like you said, chasing somebody. So give us your thoughts on that.
All right. So I have a new listing that's like in West Ridge. It is probably priced $125,000 more than the last comp on the block. The last comp on the block was a bungalow that didn't do a full second floor expansion. And then this house also had a huge expansion going backwards, I would say 50 years ago. It's only had 2 owners in the last 100 years. And it's a 4,500 square foot bungalow. They put in a
how wide's the lot?
33.
Okay.
And they put a full addition on. Like, they cut the roof off. They didn't just fix the couple bedrooms upstairs. And people can't really comp it. So I had a lot of activity over the weekend. And then there was, one guy that came back one time, and then the next day with his wife. And then they're coming back a third time today with their agents because they saw it 2 times without their broker. They were telling me that they were thinking about the neighborhood all week, and, just that there's some interest, but I wasn't sure if like they were for sure, interested, but I didn't follow up because I feel like at that point I look anxious, right?
100%. I think it's the worst thing you could do is follow.
Agreed. And I told my client, listen, you can be really like laid back and low key as part of your strategy. And you don't have to be aggressive to be aggressive. Like,
No.
As a negotiation tool,
Being non-aggressive is really fucking aggressive.
And that is the new art form. Like,
Oh, man,
you can't be over anxious and chasing people down. You
It's
have
like
to believe.
dating. It's like dating. There's no, I'm telling you something. I always say this to people. They're like, do you think I'd be good in real estate? I'm like, I don't know. I go, can you walk into a bar and get a phone number from a girl? Or whoever you want to get a phone number for. Because if you can never meet somebody and get them to give you their phone number, I said, or anything else, I said, you're good at sales. Because that's all it is, right?
Yep.
It's a gameplay. I couldn't agree more with you. And there's times that like, I have sellers that are like, feedback. And I'll call them right after I go, they said this, they looked at this, we'll do this. Sometimes I'm just like, hey man, I'll even say, I called and got feedback and there's someone interested. And I never did, because I know at the end of the day, my job and your job sometimes is to protect our clients from themselves.
I agree with that. And I actually had this discussion with my client yesterday that says, know that I'm being aggressive by not over following up with these people. And lo and behold, this morning, the agent wants to come back with the client after basically 5 days of nothing.
Yeah,
It's a slow play. It's like playing Hold'em. You have good cards. You don't want to over bet your hand and scare everyone off. You got to just let the pot build a little.
And what's interesting too is that I think, and this may also be, all of our reputations precede ourselves. So everyone here in this, let's say the top 50 agents, everybody knows how the top 50 agents that are in that 50 agents, we all know each other's styles. It is. I know your style, you know my style. I know this person's style. I know out of the top 10 agents in the city, there's 5 of them on the top of my head. I know their style. The minute they start calling me and hunting me down, I know I have them. And I'm like, and I'll call my client and be like, I know this agent, this is how they are. If they're doing this, I know we can get X, Y, and Z. It's just like playing poker. I mean, you're just opening up your deck and saying, this is what I got, because I can't control myself.
Yeah.
Most of those people are volume people. Like they're like, hey, it's like, let's just get this done. Let's just get this done. But I agree with you. I think in anything in sales, the person that makes the first move is the person that usually is going to lose.
Let me ask you a question, though. There was another person at this open house, broker. Client seemed interested. They brought her back an hour later over the weekend. They want to know if there's another offer coming in that they get a courtesy call.
No.
Do you feel like that's warranted?
No. So here's my other thing. This is a great one. I will never do that because I did that. I've been in business just about as long as you have. And the first 5 or 6 years I did that. It has, when I mean never, 0. I'm like 0 for 10 for that working. When someone comes in multiple times and does not put an offer in, they are not committed to the property, and it's going to be a nightmare. They're going to cancel. They're going to find a way out. Something's going to happen. If you have to call someone for anything, forget housing. If you have to call someone and say, hey, I'm asking you out on a date, and then you have to call them back and go, oh, I got a date this Friday. You have to tell me now if you want to go out Friday. That person doesn't want to go out with you. If they're going out with you, they're going out for a free meal or something else.
Yeah.
So if that person's not committed to spending $1 million, it's not a fucking, I always tell people, it's not a pack of gum.
I don't think I'm going to chase them down based on that because you can't step up.
Yeah.
When it was basically yours all week to step up. So now I'm going to reward you for your non-ability to write an offer.
So I have this conversation just like we're having right now, and I'll have it with my seller, and I'll tell them this, and they'll be like, oh yeah, don't call. I'm like, well, don't you see that? You should know that, right? But then I'm thinking, oh, they don't know what we do. They don't do what we do. But it's always burned me. Like I've always had a cancellation. Like they always cancel.
Or do you scare the real buyers away because you engaged this second person?
Yep, that's another thing. So I had a listing on Grace 3 weeks ago, and these people came 3 times. And I'm like, oh yeah, I have a ton of interest. And the mom was the realtor for it. And God, no,
Kiss of death.
yeah. So it's super nice. But I did have a ton of interest in the property. And she says, well, we're really interested. Can you call us if you have an offer? And this is the line I always use. I say, I will call you once I'm under contract. If you want to wait till that time, it's totally fine. Or you can put an offer in.
It's a good line. I'm going to use it.
I'll call you when we're under contract. And then you can put a backup in. I'm like, but I tell the realtor, why would I call you when I have a person that's willing and able, who I didn't have to coerce to put an offer in? Then I take the time to tell this to realtors and then call you to fuck up the deal. I'm like,
For the real buyer.
yeah, no.
And do they deserve that?
It's not even that. It just doesn't work.
Well, sometimes they actually do. That's a whole nother podcast.
But it never works. Has it ever worked for you? It's always ended in cancellations.
I don't think so. The more I think about it, I'm like, I'm not going to do that.
No, because you know that they're not into it. I mean, no one walks into a house multiple times and doesn't write and then writes when there's an offer. Because at that point, then, like, they're just getting chased into it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they sleep on it overnight and they're like, oh, I don't want it now.
Here's another quick snippet on this same house. So I worked with a guy pre-COVID. He was going to buy one of the Candea listings on like 5945 Hermitage. He needed a second parking spot and quickly became out of his budget by like, I don't know, $70,000. Then he had put in an offer on a duplex down. But then during COVID, like his job was unstable. He pulled the plug on that. Well, he comes into my open house on this bungalow because he's back after, being gone for a couple of years. Of course, because he pulled his offer on that other house. He doesn't call me when he comes back into town to look. So, but he just trickles into my open house. And
Did he know it was you in the open house?
yeah,
Okay.
He knew. And,
I don't know if he walked in and said, oh, Ken. Oh,
no, but I know he's working with a different realtor now. And I'm like, wow, that's how you reward me? You're the only guy that pulled out, during the lockdown.
Yeah.
And now you come into my house with a new broker. Well, long story short, I said, yeah, that one that you had an offer on just sold for $930. You could have bought it for $780. And then he proceeds to tell me that the one that they could have bought for like $820 is like on the market for $1.3. And I'm like, ouch. And then he's questioning like my price on this bungalow too. So it's just one of those things where if people try to get into your head about your price, and I always tell people now my new superpower is to listen to people. And if it's something I don't really want to respond to, the old Ken would have probably bickered with them a bit.
Yeah.
And got into it. The new Ken just says, in one ear, out the other. I don't give a shit. My new superpower is not to respond to it.
But do you think that's because you have kids too?
I think it's because you reach 20 years into this business and you know that there is just so much like crap. And then, that also leads me into these buyers that come in that they try to knock the house down a little, or you can just tell they're pre-posturing. And I think to myself, you're not really helping yourself. If we get into a situation where there's two bids, I'm always going to choose the other person.
Oh my Lord. I had a whole podcast on that like a year ago or 2 years ago. And I'm like, these people that come in and say all this nasty stuff in a market that's such a seller's market, what are you accomplishing? Other than the fact there's going to be 6 offers and I'm going to look at my guy and say, this person poo-pooed the house for an hour straight. Let's get rid of him. Let's go to this person. Let's go to, Isn't that?
Doesn't help them.
It doesn't help them. Stop. Like if you, and if you like a place, you can say you like it. Doesn't mean you're going to overpay for it, but you want to be committed to the house, especially when there's multiple offers. That went on a lot.
Legions antennas go up when they hear that.
Yeah. Because if we pick that offer, it's our ass if it doesn't go through.
Well, I also think people didn't realize it, but they did now, is that they thought COVID would just crush the market, and it did the opposite. And then they didn't realize their actions really hurt them.
Yep.
And missed out on stuff.
And then, so I don't even know where we are on time. It's been a very good conversation. But I will ask you this too. 2 things I have. At what point do you say bye to, because I just did this. At what point do you say bye to a buyer when they're buying and canceling, buying and canceling, buying and canceling?
I haven't had much of that, but I will tell you I've had 3 buyers that are 0 for 10 in their last submitting of offers. One person is 0 for 2. Another person was 0 for 2, though we pulled out of one of the deals. And I have a poor girl that is 0 for 6.
Now,
and sometimes she was outbidding by getting outbid by 10 grand. And then sometimes she was just getting blown out of the water.
What areas for the girl?
Pretty much north center, Edgewater type places.
Condos, single.
And then one in Logan Square, condos, all in that 375 to 4.25 price point.
That price point
was rough.
Yeah, it still is.
And they're getting 8 offers. But one thing I'm going to tell you about those 6 out of 8 offers is that people have gotten really cocky on the list side when you're on the buy side, and they make you rush to get in an offer, and then they sit on all this stuff for a day and give you no feedback, and then you get a thing through showing time that you lost.
They do that for showing time?
Yeah, they've just done it, or the buyer just picked something else with no feedback and none of that.
I was in a multiple offer in Bucktown at a single family home, and the agent, she listed, it was really cool. It was nice. And it set expectations for my buyers. It was we had 10 offers.
Yep.
7 were over asking. 3 were over 50,000 asking. 2 were over 100,000 asking.
You sort of knew where you were.
And 5 of them had no mortgage contingencies. 10 of them were as is. And then I sent this to especially for a buyer that's a little delusional, that they think the market's falling apart. I'm here, this is
what happened.
And you're none of these.
So this happened to my client. I was up.
It was really nice.
I was up in Glencoe with him. Long story short, they lost one house. It was priced, I think, at $1,325,000. We ended up at $1,363,000. It sold for $1,390,000. We lost it by 27 grand. So a little disappointing. Same house, a block down, comes on the market. They price it at $1,050,000. They get 9 offers. The house needs a new roof and all new windows. It has a coach house. It's sort of cool. We come in at a little over 1.1. We probably lost by $250K. We weren't even close, because what I think people did, at least in the North Shore, is they used the comp up the street, backed out about $100,000 for the work that needed to be done, and justified overpaying on this other house by call it $225,000. I'll be curious to see what it closes at. And we put in for 1.1. There were 6 offers over 1.2 and some over $1,250,000, and we got completely blown out of the water. But I did have that discussion with the agent about getting no feedback on our offers on how we stood, and she typed up a nice email like the one you received.
Yeah, it helps. It sets expectation. It really helps as an agent for a buyer that's hey, especially our offer was awful. Well, he gave me the offer and he's like, and it doesn't matter how much over asking. It wasn't even at market value. I go, this offer is not at market value. The house is mispriced. This is why this is happening. There's nothing wrong with the house. No one's over. This is just where the market's at. The city, I don't know about the North Shore that much because you have differences in inventory because you can have extreme differences because of the width and the length of lots and where it's located.
Yeah.
In the city, it's fucking 25 by 125.
Yeah.
There's not many ways to do it this way or that way. He was totally off the market. And, I sent it to him and he was just like, I just can't go there. I'm like, well, for the house you want, this is what that costs. I go, you need to take a pause and figure out, can I switch locations? Can I switch the size of the house? Can I switch X, Y, Z? Because if not, I'm just letting you know you're not going to be able to buy a house in Bucktown for this price. And just, call me when you've changed directions.
And here's the new thing builders, I think, are doing now, because I've noticed this, is that it would be like you would buy a pound of coffee that used to cost $10, and now that same pound of coffee costs $10, but it's 12 ounces instead of 16 ounces.
Oh,
I think builders are actually doing the same thing where they're building a house that's maybe 500, square feet under the FAR.
I mean, I can tell you. I work for
just to keep the price points down. So now people want to use these comps as apples to apples comparison.
No one builds a 4,100 square foot home, which is the amount of square footage you can build, because you can build that house at 3,600 square feet and have the same components really as that 100%. The standard house right now is 36 to 3,700 square feet.
Down by 400 square feet.
But I have developers that are now going to 3,400, 3,350, but they're comping it as 4,000. No one builds a 4,000 square foot home anymore. No.
And people need to know this.
No one.
It's not an apples to apples comparison.
Yeah.
30,000
the new one.
Where it's like a full 3-car garage because they built it at a time they didn't have to do the easement to the alley. It's all brick. There's no hardy. And it's priced a little more than some of the resales. Like there's a house I'm selling now off market where the hardy board special next door. When you're in my client's house and you look at the side of that house, you can see all the miscuts on the hardy and how quickly it was thrown together.
Yeah.
And, one thing people also have to remember is once you buy this new construction house, I mean, you have to put another $100,000 in blinds and AV equipment and all that stuff, and they forget about that.
So I sell a lot of new construction, but I'm hardly ever on the buy side of new construction. I will try everything in my power to push people away from new, because new is new for 1 year, and then it doesn't depreciate, but the premium you're paying pulls out, especially if you're buying new, because you have to buy shiny and you have to leave a good neighborhood when you could buy something of value in that neighborhood. You used to be able to get great value in a good neighborhood when rates were 2%, 3%, because people were like, fuck it, I'll just spend more money. That's the shift that I'm seeing. We talked about at the beginning. Yeah. People are going to that value and say, hey, I don't need 1.3 in Timbuktu. I'm going to pay 1.3 and be in the heart of Bucktown, Roscoe, Logan.
They want to go somewhere where they can walk.
And I just want to be new, but I'm okay with that. I just want to make sure the bones are right. And I don't need it to be new. I'm not saying it's 20 years old, but the spread, because of where rates are, the biggest thing I saw is the spread is coming in from new and old. The new's coming down and the old is getting pushed back up because it was so depressed. Because it's expensive now. The mortgage payments are more.
Well, this is what even this little house I'm selling on Rockwell, like it's 4,500 square feet. I mean, it's priced at less than $200 a foot.
That's a big house.
Let's just say you wanted to even do that level of rehab now. You're paying through the roof for it.
Yeah.
Because you can't. It's so expensive.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right.
I want to shift really quick.
All right,
just a little Bulls fun fact for you, because I didn't know if you knew this or not, because you're such a big Bulls fan. Never forget when the Bulls started 3-20 in the 2017-2018 season and proceeded to go on a 7-game winning streak after Mirotic returned from the injury. Remember, Bobby Portis punched him in the jaw.
Yeah.
Mirotic is really the reason why the Bulls don't have Luka Doncic, Trae Young, DeAndre Ayton. Well, maybe they don't want him or Jaren Jackson Jr. because they went on this little mini run when Mirotic came back. So maybe they should have just bottomed out at that point.
I mean, they had a choice between Mirotic and Portis, and they picked the wrong person.
Yeah.
Bobby's been great for Milwaukee, and he takes hometown discounts.
I know, and
They don't pay your
he is. We had Mirotic on the Bucks too, and he sort of stunk, and then he went back to.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we traded for him from I forget who, but we paid a lot of money to get him, and then he stunk, and then we ended up obviously getting Bobby.
So you're a Bucks fan. What do you think this year?
I think a new coach is really going to be the difference maker, and
You put it on the coach?
I do put it on the coach because I think the Bucks won despite their coach, and they never. When you don't play your young guys, and this goes through even my kids' AAU team and my high school and all these types of teams. When you're up 30, play some of these other kids, give them some burn. Same thing on these pro teams, give some of these other guys some.
But they do that in high school. We'll be up 10 or 12 runs for baseball at Peyton, or we'll be down 10 or 12 runs, and Lee played JV. He was the first person off the bench, so he got a decent amount of bats. But Lee, the game is over, and you've got 7 kids sitting, and think of the program. Get these kids at bats. Get these people. I agree with you. I think I don't know why they do that, but they do it in every sport.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think the coach that will make these adjustments will be the one that.
Yeah. And they got Nick Nurse, right?
No, they got Adrian Griffin that worked under Nick Nurse.
He was in the Bulls.
They didn't even want Nick Nurse. They were just so impressed by this guy because you know why? There's a lot of guys like this, even in real estate or anywhere, where they're really good at the X's and O's, and they're not really they're just sort of under the radar, but they do good stuff. And
is he an X and O guy, or is he a?
That's it. He got up during the interview and said, "This is where you guys did all this stuff wrong, and why I'm going to change it." Because nobody has the balls to tell Giannis not to shoot the three-pointer. It's infuriating when he's not on the low block when he's the most dominant player in the league, and they want him to bring up the ball and shoot through, and then they pack the D, and then he's shooting 3-pointers and missing, and you're like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
I mean, they're giving him that open shot, but that doesn't mean you have to take it.
He doesn't play with his back to the basket that much.
No, but that's a lost art for him, and that could be just a podcast and a podcast.
Dude, that's why Joker's unstoppable.
That's why back in the day, every small forward in the league had a post-up game.
This is way off topic, and I don't even know if we'll play this. You can't see. But I was at Mount Carmel, and Lee is playing
the one down in Hyde Park.
Yeah.
Nice gym, by the way.
Oh, great. So we're there. The Cacciatories donated that gym. So I'm sitting there looking at the most state championships ever. I mean, the state championships at Mount Carmel, there's not enough space on the fucking walls. And I'm watching the kids play, and every single pick and roll is a pick and a pop to the 3-point line. And I literally was losing my mind. I went downstairs, and I'm very close to it's Jared. I'm close to the coach. I went down to Jared, and I said, why don't they pick and roll to the basket? It's like, no one does that anymore. I'm like, who? The pick and roll to the 3-point line. First off, you're bringing the defender there. You're not creating anything, and this defender can just shift over. I don't know. I just the state of basketball right now is
so different.
It's depressing. And if you could play with your back to the basket, I tell it to Lee all the time. I said, if you could backdoor cut and play your back, I'm like, you're a big dude. Play with your back to the basket. I'm like, there's no stopping you. Because first off, no one knows how to play post defense.
No.
So
they don't even know how to front, and then
that's what I'm saying. So if you
they don't even know how to box out anymore. Because nobody wants to put their ass on somebody.
And people just walk through the three. People just walk through the 3 second, go from one side to the other. I'm like, dude, get your shoulder into that guy's body and get him out of there. And just, I don't know, man. It's depressing.
I agree.
Watching high school basketball is depressing.
I'll leave you with one thing, though. My son, he plays hoops, as you know. He's a really good shooter, but he probably didn't really even grow into his body until this past year. And this summer league, he didn't run with the A team, but man, he took it out on his competition. But the thing that is so inspiring about my son is that there was probably a couple times I wanted him to quit because I just felt like he was getting so slighted. And this past year, they even had some injuries, and they lost 3 games in a row. And then he went downstate, And they're the only team, DePaul College Prep was the only team from Chicago that won a state championship this year for 2A. And he got a nice little ring. And it was a very rewarding experience for somebody that just stuck it out, that I'm like, I'm so proud of you for just...
When a kid gets demoted, because both my kids have been demoted, promoted, and demoted, but when someone gets demoted, I look at like Will went from the A team to the B team, then goes about A team back and forth, depending on, what's going on. I'm just like, listen, dude, it's just more reps. I'm like,
that's it.
I go, refine your skills.
Yep.
It's more reps. And I'm like, and don't look at it as a slight. Look at it as an opportunity to run the team.
Yep.
An opportunity to shine, an opportunity to take 20 shots a game versus 10.
Well, and that's what happened to my kid. Like at his AAU, you would look at their team and you wouldn't think like he's the guy that's doing all the scoring if you were to see him on the court. And I said, that's the beautiful thing about this. Like nobody knows you, right? And then this summer, he had a couple games where he hit like his third three in one game, and his JV coach that didn't really play him, I just saw his facial expression when he hit that third one, like, wow, I can't believe he just hit another one. And then there was a one game where this other dad whose son starts on varsity, he came to this game because his younger son was playing with my son on this last like summer league game. And it was great because my kid hit 4 threes to start the game. They were up 12-0. And this dad was sitting next to me, like, just sort of like, wow, I didn't know he was such a good, shooter. And I'm like, yeah, he's a great shooter, but nobody knows. Yeah, exactly. So I said,
and I think coaches getting to their zone, like, these are my 5, this or this, and I can't do this and I can't do that. It's just like, you got to be aggressive. You got to make yourself, when you have those moments, you just have to take control of them and you have to make those moments happen.
Yeah.
It's tough. I mean, it's tough as a parent that has kids that play sports and it's the whole psychology of it. And I think for myself, I always tell my wife, I go, I have matured versus like taking these opportunities that I probably would have been like you said,
upset.
Fuck him, this guy. And you go home and you take that negative aspect at that coach and that team and the kid takes it.
Yeah.
Well, versus like now, I
work harder. Show everybody that they're wrong.
Or hey, listen, this is a good move for you because of X, Y, Z. Make it a positive. Hey, this is an opportunity. Like Will was a shooting guard on the A team, then they moved him to the B team. But the coach says, I'm moving to the B team, and he's going to run the team. And I'm like,
I would rather have that.
And I did. And I said, you're going to learn how to run a team. You're going to have to work on your handles. You have to work on this, your vision.
You got to talk.
Yeah, now he's moving them back up. But the growth that he had playing a position that forced him to
handle the ball
and handle the ball because he just sits in the corner. I mean, Will hits like 7 or 8 threes a game. I mean, he's like but it forces him to do something. None of these kids, and I think us too as agents, no one wants to do what they're bad at. But if you don't do what you're bad at, you can't grow. Like you don't want to send letters out. You don't want to door knock. You don't want to do this. You don't want to do that. Well, if you're not making money, you need to fucking do that because that's why you're not growing.
Yeah.
And it's like you have to teach that to the kid from the beginning because it goes through the whole gamut of your life. You got to do what you don't.
Well, new agents, like, I don't know, and I find this to be true, like, they just have to be hungry, right? You got to want it. And I guess it comes down to anything, like how hungry are you to work? You know? And I see this with my own kids. Like they have an unlimited toolbox of connections that I've made if they want to use it. And I tell them, I said, you guys aren't hungry enough because you have it almost too good.
Dude, that's
a really tough thing.
And it's hard. My wife says that to me all the time. She goes, you made it too easy. But I don't even know how to, once you're there, how do you roll back from that?
Well, little things, you have to do.
Yeah.
Just, you have to have the talk with them every day. They get sick of hearing from you. But it is what it is.
All right, cool. Well, I appreciate Ken. This was fantastic.
By the way, your new office is awesome.
All right. Well, hey, people want to get a hold of you. Give them your stats.
What phone number? 773-398-5585. But I don't come on here for business.
I know, but
I come on here to chat with a good friend.
Yeah, people. I don't know. People may want to talk to you. So I appreciate your time. I know how busy you are.
I know how busy you are.
Well, yeah, but you're making time for me. Thank you so much, guys. We'll be dropping this probably by next week, the last week in July. I can't believe the year's almost over and school starting.
Kids are going back to school like
Lord.
mid-August. I know, it's like bittersweet.
Oh, no, it's not.
So maybe for you, because you have younger kids.
Sweet.
I have a sophomore in college, so it's always crazy. He's going to go back August, I think, 19th.
Does he talk to you still?
He does.
Okay, good. Because my sophomore, but I'm like, they just talk less and less.
They do talk less and less, but they talk, I don't know. I guess it's just weird. I guess this is what they do. You don't take it personal.
No, and then they come back to you. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate listening to any of our podcasts. The Jason Theory, we're on iTunes, Audible, Amazon, whatever you want. And be good and stay good.